Open your eyes. Wake up, Link.
I'm Luke Summerhaze.
I'm James J. Miles.
And I'm James the Jaster Stewart.
And you're listening to Hyrule Field Report. Jas, what did we do last time?
Last time we said our goodbyes to Rauru, and as well as recalling the Master Sword, which we never mentioned the last time, by the way, and headed downward off the Sky Islands to Hyrule Field.
Did we even talk about seeing Zelda on the bridge?
What bridge?
What, in Great Sky Island?
On the Sky Island.
Yeah. Like right at the end of the Sky Island, you're sort of walking out on that. Well, I guess it's not a bridge because it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I was confused. I'm like, what bridge? Like, it's a
Island.
bridge into nothing. It's where you leap off. Yeah, like, that's what I was saying. We didn't. Like, a pretty big thing, like, before we got to, like, the end of the Great Sky Islands. There's a whole kind of big deal of, like...
Did we not mention that? I'm sure we spoke about, like, when the sword goes away, you hear, like, a recall noise and...
Did we? I don't think we did.
Well, we have done now.
Yeah.
Well...
Maybe I'll remember it. I don't know.
After that confusing start, on this week's episode of The Report, we're going to be taking our first steps into Hyrule Field proper and finding out just what the hell is going on following our less than fortunate encounter beneath Hyrule Castle.
So, did we get to the end of that bridge to nowhere, as we described it? Did you guys just jump straight down?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, pretty clearly having a little look around and then saw there was like a kind of body of water. Or like knew that was a kind of general area to jump because it's kind of, where else can you go, right?
Well, I went back and took one of the gliders down.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Where the hell did you end up landing then?
Not where you're supposed to.
Like way south. Like way south. Because it points you south, right? I think, if I'm...
I mucked around with it. I think I ended up going kind of...
Ended up at Hyrule Castle.
No, I just ended up a little bit west of where you're meant to.
All right. Because you're meant to land in, as Jas pointed out, the big body of water, which is conveniently named the Bottomless Pond, mercifully. Because if physics had anything to say, Link would have met a quick and sudden end upon
he's still
the surface tension of the water.
Looks like thinking too far ahead. He's like, well, I've not got a paraglider yet. Like, let's just take the actual glide that, like, the games, like Zone I gliders down. Because that's what you're meant to do.
We kind of spoke about this on one of the last episodes, that there was a point where I was genuinely thinking, are we even going to get a paraglider in this game? So, well, what you did doesn't feel that wild to me.
Yeah.
But you still landed within Central Hyrule Field, unfortunately, not off in nowhere.
Southeast, southwest direction.
I think the glider started flashing.
Yeah.
So I just was like, right, I'm jumping into the first body of water I see.
Yeah, I think that happens after you're either on it for... I couldn't work it out. Like, it's for a certain distance or a certain time.
Distance, yeah, I think it's distance-based.
But eventually your Zone I devices will flash out of existence, which I guess is a balancing thing.
Only some
until they break the game.
From what I've figured out so far, at least.
Yeah.
But yes, we land.
I mean, yeah. So most Zone I devices, it's just based on like your battery, right?
Yeah, and then
even then, like after a while, like, even with your battery, like it will, even if you've got like mostly full battery, it will still puff out of existence after you get to a certain distance.
I see.
There's certain things that don't know, like... Swear. Like, because I've got,
just like
a
It's
flying
more like,
device recently,
in my
and it's just like
experience-
fans and one of the little control sticks, and it never runs out.
Yeah, I've not had that because I also built a hover bike because they're just too good. But yeah, like bigger contraptions definitely seem to like. I think it's like the wings and stuff like that don't seem to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my experience, it's not like they're tied or anything. It's just as soon as I leave it somewhere, it's gone when I come back.
Oh yeah, like that's just kind of memory issue with the game, really. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's inevitable, right? Because otherwise people would just be covering Hyrule and stuff.
but like, you don't even have to like roam that far for like stuff to disappear. Because I was doing like a Korok, like getting one of the Koroks to like his wee pal, and like I literally like ran to like get some zone eye items like a couple of yards away, and I turn around and like go back to the Korok, and the items that I just collected were gone. And I'm like, well, you're not getting up there anytime soon.
So it's I think it's still quite. It's strange, kind of landing in Central Hyrule Field as your first kind of mainland area.
It's a fun twist on the last game because that was such a terrifying area.
Yeah, that was Guardian Central, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you did not want to get near the castle just because, you know, unless you were very prepared, you were probably going to die. Kind of stuck around the Great Plateau at most. And I'm pretty sure was it in Breath of the Wild was the tower in Hyrule Field like not like just terrifyingly getting like targeted constantly by guardians.
Yeah. The whole challenge of that tower was just going around it so that guardians were on the other side of the tower from you. And you go up a little bit further, you get targeted by another one, so you got to avoid that one. But thinking about it, it's weird compared to Breath of the Wild, but compared to most other Zeldas, doing the starting area and then going to Hyrule Castle Town is actually like the pretty basic flow, right?
Yeah, I mean, like as early as I can think of for being a Hyrule Castle Town, like back in, you know, Ocarina. Yeah.
Or even Link to the Past before that.
Link to the Past.
The very first thing you do is go to Hyrule Castle.
Yeah. Similar vibes in Twilight Princess. Yeah, I mean, it is a common thing. So it is kind of a return to the series' roots in some respects, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So when I went back yesterday, I realised that, yeah, from the bottomless pond to, like, Lookout Landing, if you just go, you know, as the crow flies, it's really close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think probably all three of us got distracted on our way towards the objective.
Well, I mean, was it an objective right away?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's marked. Yeah, Lookout Landing is marked for you to go there, yeah.
Okay, I don't remember that.
You were trying to get your bearings after gliding into no man's land.
Yeah, that's probably why you're confused of if it was an objective, because I think if you just dive off like you're supposed to, like as the clouds are kind of parting a little bit, you actually get a little look at the Lookout Landing before it kind of shoots you down like more south of where it actually is.
So the first thing I did after landing, so there's Bottomless Pond, a little bit to the south there's like Batteria Lake, I think I just landed in there, something like that. Or maybe to the left there's Lake Coloma, one of those two. Very quickly I found a horse. And immediately I managed to get on one of these horses, tame it. Like, well, I've got to find a stable then. So I followed the path a little bit, found a stable. And on my way to the stable, I messaged my girlfriend, like, what should I name my first horse? And bless her, she said Epona. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. So she said, then call it Lady Mascarpone. But then I got to the stable, and one of my favourite surprises of the game so far. All my horses were there from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I thought it was a really neat touch. One that just makes sense, right? Like they're not gonna
Yeah.
like the Stable Association is not going to just release all of Link's horses after he saves, saves Hyrule. Like you don't need these anymore, right, Link? Like they're still going to be there.
Well, and it makes sense gameplay-wise. Like they can't give you all your gear, but they can give you your horses.
Yeah. I mean, so it was just really amusing, just like immediately taken out.
Find out about the horses until a little bit later. Like, and I was spent after I landed, like I spent absolutely ages trying to like catch horses. Like, cause and then shortly after that, like I saw like one of the fallen shooting stars like land in the distance. And I gotta get this horse. Like, eventually tamed it. Didn't even have the stable, just a wild horse, like no saddle or anything. And I'm like just making a beeline south for the shooting star. And just as I was edging closer to it, it disappeared.
Heartbreak.
I was like,
Last night, when I was just trying to mark all of the shrines for this episode, I got 2 shooting stars, so I ended up playing a little later than I was planning to.
I think as soon as I didn't find out until a little bit later as well about the horses carrying across, but as soon as I did, I immediately pulled out the Ganondorf horse from the first game, the giant one with the orange mane.
I've mostly just been using the one I caught in this game because it feels, appropriate.
Well,
I went straight back to my strongest one. I had like horses named after Dark Souls bosses.
My best horse was Shadowfax, king of the horses.
But my main horse from Breath of the Wild is called Randy, because when I got my first horse, I put on Snapchat, what should I call my horse? And my friend Rich, who's a big Randy Orton fan, said Randy.
Right.
And I'm glad I went with that, because the next reply I got was Nadolf Hitler.
Oofed.
Oh dear.
I do not have a horse called Nadolf.
I think one thing I will say is, just while we're on the topic of horses, definitely not as useful in this game compared to Breath of the Wild, I found. Like, Breath of the Wild, I was using horses a lot.
Yes, but they will come from a lot further away than they did in Breath of the Wild, I think.
Yeah, it's just...
So, actually, mechanically, I think they are more useful.
It's just later in the game.
There's so many other ways of traveling.
It's just like, with you there, Jay, I think, like, just later, like you said, like later in the game, there's just certain parts of the region and the way the map's kind of designed, it just doesn't seem to benefit having a horse a whole lot.
Yeah, I think just
apart from like when you're in the central Hyrule area, it's fine, but anywhere else it's a pain.
I think a lot of people felt that way about Breath of the Wild too. Like, once you've unlocked all the towers, there's not much point having a horse when you can just warp to a tower and glide to your destination. And
we'll get into why the timbers in this game really enhance that in a little bit.
Yep. But I sometimes like to use a horse because it keeps me at ground level and lets me find things.
It's still like,
see things a little more.
You can see the uses in it. It's different ways of exploring the map, right? Rather than kind of doing in the skies above like you do at ground level.
Definitely found like a...
Depends on what you're after and what you're kind of looking for, you know?
Yeah.
It's sometimes, like you said, just travel along and seeing what you can see makes... You obviously... Rather than just gliding through the sky, you'll get a lot more out of roaming along on the ground, meet interesting people. And before we get into maybe some of the interesting people you can meet in Hyrule Field from the very beginning, one thing that will probably immediately draw your eye, like it always does, is there are a couple of shrines not that far away from the landing spot of Bottomless Pond.
Yeah, I think shrines are often placed to be a fast travel point, right? So it makes sense. You've just landed, you're going to want to have a base of operations to come back to.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always one thing we'll find as we go through the game is there's always a shrine like very close to a stable, for example.
Yes.
So yeah, that's definitely the case. So, but yeah, there's a couple reasonably close by that will probably draw the eye. Should we get into a little bit about those?
Yeah, so directly to your west, you've got Geosin Shrine, which is shape rotation.
Yeah, this was kind of it was a bit more of a chance to get to grips with Ultra Hand, I found. So
oh my god. Wait.
What?
I did this one before I had my conversation with you guys. I still didn't understand shape rotation, I think. No, that can't be right. There's no way I could have done this shrine if I didn't know how to rotate.
So the way you're meant to do this shrine is obviously you've got these giant unwieldy shapes, and it's like one of those, children's games like puzzles where you've got to fit the block through the hole, and it's a chance to play about with rotating and get to grips with Ultra Hand. Definitely.
I'm remembering finding it very difficult, like a little fiddly.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be.
I don't think it's that I didn't know how to rotate. It's that I'd only just learned how to rotate.
Yeah, this would have been impossible if you hadn't learned how to rotate. I don't know how you would have done that.
No. Yeah, I must have had known the buttons, but I'd literally just learned them the night before talking to you, I guess.
Yeah, there's a couple of. I think the first one, which the first shape you're given is fairly simple. Like the second one, you've just got to think a bit laterally and kind of envisage the shape and how you're going to get it through the hole. But it's not a difficult shrine by any stretch of the imagination. It's also not one that you can break as well, which I think is quite important for still an early shrine that you're going to be wanting to, play about the power, learn how to use Ultra Hand and manipulate it for solving puzzles.
Pretty much all the shrines in Hyrule Field feel like they're still teaching you, right? This is still the tutorial.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
a little while, I think.
Don't think the tutorial ends until you're given your main objective, which will probably end this episode on, I would expect.
Yeah, this one or next one, depending on how long we blather on.
But yeah,
if we go the other direction, we've got the Dinosaur Hunter, Tukarok Shrine.
I have
where you get your hands
on
the cerebral bore weapon, right?
Yeah, I don't remember the shrine at all, so I'll leave this one to you guys.
Forward Force. Oh right, it's yeah, it's just using like cars basically. And it's mostly about reverse. So like you have cars going back and forth. You climb on one and reverse it. Then you have one rolling down a hill. You get on that and reverse it. Stuff like that.
Kind of a bit of an extended recall tutorial in some respects, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I don't remember it means it can't have left much of an impression on me.
There's a bunch in there. Like there's a bit where you sail on some water. There's a bit where you're going up and down a hill. But yeah, it's pretty standard stuff.
One thing that is quite cool is I'm just looking at the wiki here, and the chest from the shrine is a Zonite sword, strong Zonite sword specifically. And I think these weapons are really useful just because you can whack like a bog standard shoulder one construct horn onto this with fuse, and you've suddenly got quite a powerful weapon for this stage of the game. Just
they
because
boost anything Zonai attached to them, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And later in the game, once you get, for example, I don't know if it's been possible to have done this. you probably could have done this actually if you travelled back up to the Sky Island after getting this item. But when we spoke about the flux construct in the last episode, when that dies, it leaves a kind of rotating core horn thing, which you can't pick up. It's not a drop, but you can fuse it whilst it's on the ground to get a pretty powerful weapon. And I think that does also stack with the Zonite effect on the weapon. So, like, if you're looking for an early game weapon, go up and fight that flux construct with this, fuse it to your strong Zonite sword, and you've got something that will probably give any enemy a run for the money at this stage of the game.
So you were talking about how you have the objective to go to Lookout Landing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily remember getting an objective, but so what was happening, I was riding just vaguely around the area, and every NPC I met was like, "Oh, is that you, Link? You should go and see Purah right away."
Yeah. I mean, for some reason you'd missed the flashing yellow circle on your mini-map telling you to go to Lookout Landing. The game's not going to let you miss it by any stretch. It's wanting you to go to Lookout Landing.
So eventually I did give in.
Yeah, like, fine.
Put it off like for so long as I could. It's like
one thing that before we get into like some specific NPCs you can come across on Hyrule Field, one thing I really liked that I was already getting an impression of, even in this early sort of exploration, you get an impression that since Breath of the Wild, the world is kind of healing a little bit. Like, the roads feel more populated, there's more people dotted about. It feels like Hyrule's starting to get back on its feet until obviously this happens with the castle and the sky falling and everything there. Definitely. I think in Breath of the Wild, I don't remember, outside of the stables and then obviously the main settlements, I don't remember feeling like that impression that the world felt kind of not deserted. That's the wrong word, but people felt isolated in Breath of the Wild. Whereas in this, I'm already getting the impression that people are coming together. The world is healing, like I was saying. I don't know if you guys got that impression from the.
Yeah, the main thing is people. I don't know if I got it just yet, but once you start talking to people, everyone's saying like, "Oh, people have been traveling from all over the country to help find Princess Zelda." And then every location you visit, they're like, "Oh, Princess Zelda came and helped us with this," or "Princess Zelda came and helped us with that." So the impression I get is that she's doing a lot to heal the country, which is nice. And yeah, definitely you see more travellers on the road. There's all the little, for obvious gameplay reasons, but it also helps with this. There are the little stashes of materials to build with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels like, it's not like we're back on our feet, but that we're getting back on our feet.
Speaking of those stashes of materials, did any of you come across a very unfortunate fellow trying to prop up a sign?
Addison.
The best NPC in the game, you mean? Addison.
Addison, yeah. So I think this is a nice bit of world building, like, even for this silly guy that you bump into early doors, but you do kind of find out that a big part of this kind of reconstruction effort and the world kind of healing in some respects, you mentioned obviously Princess Zelda seemed to have a big part to play, but perhaps even a bigger part to play in some respects is Hudson Construction, who, if you remember from Breath of the Wild, they initially built Link's house in Hateno village, but they then pretty much built a whole town in the Akala region, Tarry Town, and they've obviously since expanded and become a very important part of Hyrule's infrastructure.
So you know what that's going to be? That's going to be organised crime right there.
the rupee laundering going on under the tables.
Yeah, or, just one construction company getting involved in all the nation's infrastructure, spreading everywhere, all run by one guy. He's got some ties, that's all I'm saying.
Calls himself a president, like...
Yeah.
Like
founded his own...
gave himself that title, like...
Founded his own haven. Probably a tax-free refuge.
Yep.
Tax-free Tarrytown.
So do we enjoy doing Addison's little sub-questions?
Yes,
there?
absolutely. Every single time, I'm just endlessly amused by trying to help this guy prop up his sign. I think for one, it's also, again, a really good way of kind of teaching you to build structures and, play about with fuse and Ultra Hand and such there. But on the other hand, it's just really funny.
I love that. I love the panic he gets into, like when you don't do your job properly and the sign like topples over and like both like
Mr.
Addison
President,
and Link kind of do this
unacceptable
little jump animation. Like if you pan the camera around, you can see Link's face and it's like crazy, like panic-stricken face as the sign topples over. I love it.
He knows he can't offend the construction magnate by having his image touch the ground.
Yeah, he's going to wake up with a Pono's head in his bed if he does that.
I do think, because all the other Hudson construction
or he'll be
workers
sleeping with the Hyrule Bass.
That's it. All the other Hudson...
with Zora, but it turns out he's into that based on Breath of the Wild. But
like all the other Hudson construction NPCs that you meet in the game, they're all pretty competent at what they do, apart from this guy. And what I think actually happened probably is that like this guy was probably trying to help out around Tarrytown and probably botching every job he was doing. So Hudson just said, yeah, go on, just go and put up all these signs.
Yeah,
That's
here's a really
now.
important job for you, mate.
I think we're on something, by the way, like with him being like some sort of kind of mafia or something, because like they're all got like Sun in their names as well. Like all these
you have to legally change your name.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure there was an NPC that you meet in the game who's now joined Hudson Construction and has since added Sun onto his name. Like,
I remember in Tarrytown in the first game it was you were finding people with Sun in their name to like get them to join the village.
That's right, yeah. But now that he's powerful enough, he can.
There was a gag where one changed their name.
You can force them into changing their name. But yeah, this guy, like some of the places you find him, like later in the game, just like there's points where I found him trying to prop a sign up on the edge of a cliff. I'm like, mate, what are you doing? Like
way up in the snowy mountains.
Like, who's going to see this? What?
It's like he won't let go of it for long enough to do what he needs to make it stay up. It reminds me of that. I can't remember if it was a tweet or a Tumblr post or something that was getting shared around of this dork at a school in America who saw the American flag on the floor and held it in his hands until someone could come and hoist it up. And then all the replies are just making fun of him, like, it's a flag, man, don't be such a loser. Imagine telling the teacher you're an hour late for your lesson because you didn't want to let the flag touch the floor.
What is he an edit of that now? Just with, it's a sign, man, don't be such a loser.
Yep.
But yeah, just some of the contraptions I made to hold up his signs as well are just absolute eyesores. But very fun. I do wonder, like, if there is a reward for finding him at every location and propping up all his signs. Because one thing I initially thought is, oh, this would just be a recurring thing. Like, you'll come back to the area and that sign will fall over again, so it's a kind of an endless activity. But no, like, once you prop up that sign and he actually does his job and fixes it properly, anytime you come back, that sign is propped up. Like,
and it's also actually, I don't know if you've noticed, it's also propped up in the way you propped it up. Like, so if the sign tilts over even slightly, but still within the rules of the little mini game, like it's still standing, like he secures it in place, and it's like I've got one that's kind of barely upright, and it's like tilted, and it's like forever tilted every time I go past it. I'm like, that's brilliant.
See, I didn't have that problem because
little touch. I didn't
have that problem because I'm perfect at construction.
You're clearly, you need to add son to your name now, Jason.
I do think because once he gets them up, he does it pretty well. So maybe the problem's not that he's not competent. Maybe he's just so obsessed with the President Hudson that Hudson had to get rid of him. Yeah. It was getting weird.
Like, obviously there's that whole quest line in Breath of the Wild where you find Hudson, he falls in love with the Gerudo lady and they get married and such. Like, imagine Addison was probably about Tarry Town and Hudson's like, dude, I've got a family, stop being weird. Take these signs, leave.
It's a very important job. It takes you all over Hyrule. Only you can do it.
Now,
enough to save the president.
One other thing that probably would catch your eye, I would expect, as you were going towards your objective, is this gaping chasm in the earth billowing out red death. I would imagine most players will have gone and checked out what that was all about.
And then been too terrified to go very close.
So we find out that they've been investigating it, and I think if you talk to some of the NPCs that are dotted about, there's one guy that's kind of peering over the edge, and if you go up behind him and talk to him, like, he gets a fright and then he turns around and chastises Link. He's like, dude, I'm standing on the edge, don't scare me. Like, what are you doing, man? I could have fallen in.
Quite a few NPCs who say that, and I think it's gold. I'm waiting for one to actually fall in.
I've not had it happen myself. But,
I don't know if it will.
I've had ones where I'm ascending up to a bridge. I was playing earlier today. Ascended up through a bridge to get to this NPC, and as soon as I popped through from the ascend, he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
I do like how NPCs react to what Link does. It's a neat touch.
Oh, especially if you're using the Ultra Hand to build stuff, you're too near NPCs, you can just start hassling.
Prop up a sign. There's another guy who's quite poorly lying in a tent talking about how he touched the kind of red ooze on the ground, and he said it kind of sapped his life force and he's not feeling well because of it. And if you do tread on the red ooze on the ground, one of the NPCs will immediately stop you and go, whoa, don't do that, that's really bad. So yeah, the game's kind of telling you, stay away from this. This probably isn't worth investigating right now.
Well, I mean, even right at the very start of the game, Zelda's explaining, right, that the gloom has been making people sick and stuff. So we had a little hint of it when we were under Hyrule Castle.
Yeah, that's why they're partly why they're investigating underneath the castle at the beginning, right?
That's right. So whilst the game is telling you quite explicitly not to go near this, guess who jumped in?
Oh no.
I jumped in right away because for some reason I thought, oh, there'll be some water maybe at the bottom of this. Because I was still kind of thinking, yeah, there might not be a paraglider. And down I fell and splatted on the ground. Dead. Didn't see what was down there, just got a game over screen. So yeah, it's not even worth jumping down.
So, should we actually head to Lookout Landing?
Yeah, we probably should. That's enough arsing around in Hyrule Field. We should probably go to the definite focal point, which is this structure kind of situated not where kind of the, I suppose, ruins of kind of the fountain in the castle town are, but just south of there.
Yeah, south of the main castle gates would be.
That's it. Yeah, it's kind of this almost well secured fort. Like high wooden walls. You can kind of see people patrolling and guarding it. Definitely something new to go check out. And of course, it's Lookout Landing, as we find out when we approach it.
And I was talking about how on the way there, everyone's telling you, go and speak to Purah, go and speak to Purah. When you get there, that's even more the case. No one will talk to you at all until you've spoken to Purah. I
tried to, there's kind of like a group of soldiers congregating near the gate, like as soon as you walk in for the south gate, and none of them will talk to you at all. And I was just like, okay, should probably go talk to Purah. Because
my natural response is I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do all the side stuff before I do whatever the mission is, right?
Mm-hmm. That's it.
It's like, no, go and speak to Purah. Leave me. Stop talking to me and go and speak to Purah. That's
like classic games mentality, right? You're going to go down the wrong corridor to see what's down there before you go the right way, right? Like that's how I play games. Like that's how a lot of people play games.
I think it's one of those things that actually like 90% of players don't, but the kind of people who obsess over games and talk about games and record a podcast about games all do. There's the famous Miyamoto quote that's like, always reward the player who goes left, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. There's a whole like this dungeon in Earthbound. Don't know if you've played Earthbound or far enough to get to this part, but it's a man who transforms himself into a dungeon, and the whole the whole area is like a deconstruction of dungeon design. And like the guy's like, you can go right. That's the way you're gonna have to go. But if you go left, there might be a reward down there for you. That's how a good dungeon should be designed. And it's very meta.
It's a classic thing, right? If you like see a waterfall in a game, like any game, like the first thing you do is someone who's played games for as long as we have, like you're going to check behind it. There's always a secret behind there.
Always disappointed when there isn't.
Yeah. So, we were talking about all the way back up on the Great Sky Island, that really fast-running river that's kind of tricky to get across.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my student said, yeah, you can just go and walk behind the waterfall and skip it entirely.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But then finally we go up, we do see Purah, and well, she makes me really question how much time is supposed to have passed between Breath of the Wild and this game.
Yeah, because when it introduces her, like, and gives you a little kind of info dump on who she is, like, it shows you what she was like in Breath of the Wild, right? She's like a lot.
Where she accidentally transformed herself into a full-on child.
Well, we meet another character as well. Who then kind of goes and gets Purah. We meet Joshua.
Yes.
Who is I kind of took her to be like Purah's understudy. But yeah. Purah's She doesn't look like how she looked like in Breath of the Wild, that's for sure.
She doesn't even quite look how she did in Age of Calamity. Because this design is similar, but like she's got a slightly different hairdo, and like the way she's wearing that coat and stuff, the internet has gone insane for a reason.
So there is an explanation behind this, is that kind of skipping ahead to some things that you probably won't know the first time you see Pura, but
yeah,
if you poke about in the lab at Lookout Landing, and some other locations that are linked to Pura and the Sheikah, you can find Pura's diary split into 4 parts, and she does talk about how she managed to partially reverse the anti-aging technology that she used on herself back in Breath of the Wild, to age herself up to an age where she doesn't need to get people to get things off the top shelf for her, things like that. So really, that kind of just leaves it ambiguous as to how much time has passed until you get some more maybe concrete answers later in the game. But that's why she's. It's not like she's had 20 years pass or however long it's been between Breath of the Wild and this.
okay,
but she's pretty much solved aging at this point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she has technically found a way for everyone in Hyrule to be immortal. So
I think it's quite amusing that that Robbie just had nothing to do with the aging experiments going on. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be a crotchety old, but not crotchety, I'm going to be a small eccentric old man. Suck it.
So the first chat, well, she obviously like quizzes you, finds out what's been going on so far. I think I did record the little clip where she's recapping your adventures so far. But then she's like, oh, so you're back. That means Zelda's back too, right? And obviously when the answer is no, your next mission is to go and investigate what's going on there.
So she sends you to go and join a search party, which has been stationed at Hyrule Castle. And which is the next logical step, right? Like, you all this kicked off at Hyrule Castle, so maybe Zelda's still buried underneath there, or was she lifted into the air with all the nonsense that happened? We already have an inkling to the contrary, maybe by this point, but Link and everybody else probably doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, did Link hear that rewind sound that we heard? Who knows?
Who knows, right? Yeah.
How anything when you're using like powers and stuff in a game, it's like, canonically, can the characters see this, or is this just a gameplay concern?
For the player, yeah.
I like to imagine with Ultra Hand that they don't see like the lines and stuff going off, and they just see like a floating bit of wood in front of Link, and that's why they're so utterly terrified.
I always imagine it that Link can see all of that, but the other characters can't.
Yeah, so after kind of getting the objective from Pura to go and check out Hyrule Castle, Lookout Landing opens up a bit and gives you a chance to kind of poke about, and it becomes apparent that this might be something maybe of a hub area, so to speak, in this game.
Yeah, you've got a little place you can rest. You've got the the goddess statue, which so far is still the one I always come back to. And yeah, you've got a couple of shops. You've got characters you can talk to about various subquests. I mean, you still have to travel a lot to do all the different missions, but this is the closest the game has to, like you say, a hub area that you can just run all of your operations from one point.
Yeah. Like, I always, if I needed to restock on meals, after like a difficult fight, I would go down. I would go down and use the cooking pot, have a little sleep, and then head back out again.
Actually, like this, like, what does sleeping do in this game anyway? Is it actually useful? And I'm like missing out on something. I know, like heals and stuff like that, but like generally, like if I'm like going back to Lookout Land and I drop in like a heart, like blessings of light to get heart containers, you get heals off of that anyway, right?
I guess if you've got them to hand. I mean, other locations where you have to spend money, like in a stable, there's usually a pricier option than just a basic rest, which will usually give you the bonus yellow hearts or a bonus stamina wheel or both even. So it is quite convenient.
Marling's just permanently exhausted because he never sleeps. Like
bags under his eyes.
Why should you be sleeping when you've got adventuring to do? You know, shrines to collect, rocks to help.
Listen, Link, you're never going to beat Ganondorf if you're not on that grind set mindset. You've got to be waking up at 5 a.m. and thinking thoughts about power. You've got to be downing a coffee at 4:30 a.m. You've got to be clanging and banging before anyone else is even waking up.
It's just your Arnie alarm.
Yeah.
What I think is quite cool from a lore perspective as well is the kind of area which has the cooking pot and the goddess statue and the bed that we're referring to is an actual shelter. Like they call it like an emergency shelter, and the guards kind of talk about how this was likely used by the royal family to, you know, hide and escape from the castle in times of need. So there is a lore reason for why there is this underground.
That makes it a pretty good base of operations for the Lookout Land. Like,
definitely.
Just, like,
but it's clear as well.
Boxed in, like built fort, like made out of wood. Like you've actually got a position they can fall back to if any monsters were to attack.
I think my reading of it was that the wood kind of walls and structure and such was put into place probably by Hudson Construction, but I think the little shelter in the centre of Lookout Landing was probably always there.
Yeah, it's always there. Yeah.
And they've built around it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
Ah, right, cool. We're on the same page. So yeah, did you guys just immediately head off to Hyrule Castle after being given this objective?
Pretty much, because I sort of, at this point I realised, like, oh, I'm not really done with the tutorial. I've still kind of got stuff to unlock. I should probably just do what I'm told for a little while. And yes, so again, very different to Breath of the Wild, where you were putting off the castle till that's the end of the game. And here we are, right? I mean, we can't actually get up to the castle, but basically sent there as our first little mission.
Yeah, I mean, some of the kind of ground floor bits of the castle are still kind of left there after being ripped out of the earth, and you can later on poke about if you so wish. But yeah, we're going up to Hyrule Castle, and it's interesting that, like, despite it being totally, you know, bereft of any enemies or such as you approach the castle and as you move towards kind of meeting up with the search party, there's still a real air of uneasiness, I felt, kind of approaching the castle.
All the trees are dead. The town is still in ruins, completely abandoned. No one's living here again yet. Like, even though, you know, the calamity is over, I imagine this place still has a lot of bad memories for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting that they didn't begin rebuilding the castle quite, you know, from after they kind of drove out the calamity. But like you said, look, like, probably just bad vibes.
Well, we never kind of really get to see that, right? We don't know, like, all your shots early in the game when the castle gets ripped up. You don't kind of get to see what the castle is actually like.
Zelda has a line in that start when you're under the castle that, like, Oh, since the calamity, the castle's fallen into disrepair.
Ah, yeah.
I
So
see.
just like, yeah, I mean, maybe she would want to go back there because it's, her ancestral
Yeah,
home,
well, it's the whole part
but
of like
no one
that's-
else
I
did,
guess that's
I
why
bet.
kind of you've got Hudson and Co and stuff like that, kind of rebuilding, helping with rebuilding everything.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd imagine rebuilding this castle that everyone hates is low priority at the moment.
Yeah.
So before we get to the castle properly, we spoke about the 2 shrines earlier on being big tutorial vibes. The Kyonosis shrine, real tutorial vibes.
Yeah. Literally another little combat tutorial.
They had one pretty much just like this in Kakariko in Breath of the Wild. Which is where they're kind of teaching
the dodge
you
moves and stuff like that.
More kind of advanced combat maneuvers than just swinging a sword, right?
So I think I remember the Kakariko one you're talking about. But then after that, I remember most combat shrines just being a little, here's a thing to fight. Whereas so far in Tears of the Kingdom, they've all been trying to teach me a different combat mechanic.
Yeah. And the ones that are kind of, rather than just solving a puzzle, they ask you to beat up some enemies, they've got a twist. But some of them are just here. We're going to teach you about stealth, or focusing on headshots with the bow.
Yeah.
Things like that. This one teaches you obviously about flurry rushes and parrying and charge attacks. Very key elements of the combat system in this game that you're going to be using in a lot of your difficult encounters in the game. Pretty much in every fight, near enough. If you're trying to fight competently. So yeah, not much to say really beyond that. It's just a nice chance to learn.
And then we can stroll. Well, I mean, I think there are a couple other NPCs we can meet who will tell you about, like, oh, we're doing Zonai expeditions or we're doing Chasm expeditions and stuff. But most people are just sort of sitting around tired, waiting for you to go. And again, like, another little hint that you should crack on and do the main quest at the moment is that no one will actually talk to you about their side quests yet.
Yeah. Like, for example, those group of soldiers, they kind of talk about how they're part of a monster eradication squad, but they don't go into much beyond that. And yeah, the game's kind of like wanting to crack on.
And you walk up to the main doors of the castle. Back in Breath of the Wild, we used magnesis to open them. We can do the same thing now using the Ultra Hand.
Ultra Hand, yeah.
And we can make our way up to, well, as much of the castle as is still on the ground, basically.
Yeah.
The last watchtower.
You're going up to the first gatehouse, one of the two.
Probably the first, right?
That would make sense, yes. I just maybe thought like third, then second, then first. Maybe they're talking about from the castle down.
Count it? Yeah. Which way around do they count it? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're being told to go and meet Captain. Was it Bez? Baz? Boz? Hawes. Captain Bez. Happy
Melon Man.
Yeah, Captain Hawes.
Big Captain Hawes and his band of merry men with pots on their heads.
That's it. He seems very stressed when you actually get to him, which, yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you're not... We kind of theorise it's been a couple of months, right? Like, since...
It's been a little while, yeah. They keep it very vague how long.
Well, this is also where, like, they're kind of Hawes and Co and stuff like that, they've spoken about, like, Zelda's been sighted, right? Like, this is why you're up at the castle. Because there has been a sighting of Zelda.
And lo and behold, very conveniently, when Link is chatting to Captain Hawes, we have another sighting of the princess.
Yeah, she just kind of appears mysteriously and disappears like a ghost.
Yeah, kind of floats away in this ethereal light.
Into the sky, shooting, yeah.
Yeah. At this stage, we don't really have any hint as to what's going on. It's all very mysterious.
Yeah.
Especially as our first assumption before we left the Great Skyland was that she'd basically just gone back in time.
Yeah.
But this is our hint that there's something more going on than just, she's gone back to the Toodaloo and she needs to get back to the future.
Marty.
Definitely, to be honest, I still don't quite know what's going on.
Okay.
But at this stage, it's all a mystery. And I think you were talking about Hoz being stressed. Like, him and his men, they want to be fighting monsters. And here they are trying to solve mysteries far beyond their ken. Like, they don't know how they're going to find Princess Zelda. They came to have a look, but, it's one thing to search for someone physically. It's another thing to solve weird existential time travel ghost mysteries.
They're also very reluctant to poke to kind of there's still some like the basement of the castle still kind of like there. Like you can kind of poke about in that. So after this happens, you're obviously told to report back and report you just saw Zelda fly away like a ghost. If you want to though, you can, like I said, poke about kind of the basement side of things of the castle. And there's a couple of NPCs by the doors going, you probably shouldn't. There's some really nasty monsters in there.
Yeah, they don't like
but
it.
But if you want to... No, they do.
They told me, like, I just remember, like, talking about this now, like, I've got kind of some unfinished business to go back to an NPC who wouldn't let me past the door that he was guarding because I wasn't well equipped enough, apparently.
Had you spoken to Hoz first by that point?
Probably not. And then I just like kind of
because
after I'd done everything else, I just went back to report like we were saying and just kind of forgot about it.
So I definitely poked about in the castle after I spoke to Hoz. Right. Like there's a lot of like black bokoblins, black moblins, enemies that you should not be fighting at this stage. But you can kind of poke about and have a look, and there's, some you can get some good weapons and such there, but they're not like, it's not like where in Breath of the Wild, if you went to the castle at an early stage, you were going to get end game weapons. Like you could pick up the Hylian shield, for example, It felt like more like mid game weapons, shall we say? Like, nothing too wild, but a nice little head start. But it was interesting just to kind of poke about and see, okay, is there anything the soldiers maybe missed whilst they were a bit nervous about obviously fighting some of those nastier beasties. But yeah, no real sign of anything. Whilst we were poking about down there.
I've not missed out on anything like too crazy.
No, definitely not. There's only there's one interesting bit of lore, I suppose you could say, that I've not really seen tie into anything. So I feel it's worth bringing up at this point. But you can find a plaque that it's by this kind of like stairwell, and that's kind of been ripped away as if it was like leading down further down. Probably down to maybe where Link and Zelda travelled, talking about how the castle is always so I can't remember how exactly it goes, but it kind of paraphrases that the castle has always stood as a bastion against evil, and the castle should never be moved from where it lies right now, and should stand for all time as a pillar against evil sort of deal. Kind of suggesting that maybe they purposely built this castle to maybe avoid anybody muscling in and disturbing a certain mummy down below. Yes. So nothing wild. Definitely haven't missed anything wild by not poking down there. But it's just a nice little additional bit of lore as to why
Deep beneath this land, our mighty first ruler imprisoned the Demon King.
Oh, yeah,
To ensure
difficult.
the king's magic would hold, we erected a castle here to protect this sacred site. Without the castle in place, the site may be disturbed, allowing the Demon King's hatred and rage to be revived. The preservation of this castle is therefore tied to the prosperity of the kingdom.
Yeah.
May it watch over an eternal peace. So even more on the nose than you were suggesting. Like, there's no
Yeah, I think
subtlety about what they're saying there.
I was paraphrasing it and making it more vague than it actually was. Yeah.
I have been down in the dungeons under the Hyrule Castle a little bit, but not through this route.
Yes.
Same. Yeah, same. Yeah, I've done that for sure.
That I think we'll probably speak about that in a much later episode because the way you've
Does that
probably
unlock
got to the
after
dungeons.
you do your first dungeon or something?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So heading back to Lookout Landing, we chat to Pura about spotting Zelda. And we don't really have a lead anymore as to where she could be because she's floated up into the ether. But she does suggest a few different avenues you can go down. Or does she tell you first to go check out the elephant in the landing, so to speak, the giant tower that we've not checked out? I can't remember the exact order of things.
I can't remember if she tells you if you have to do the tower before she gives you information or not. Because, yeah, she basically says, well, I got no idea where to look for Zelda, but these weird phenomena are going on, so why not look into those? But before that, yeah, we get to do our first tower.
Skyview Tower.
Well, they're all Skyview Towers, right? That's just what they're called.
Yeah, this one is just called the Lookout
Lookout.
Landing Skyview
Yeah.
Tower. Yeah.
So towers are a bit different than how they were in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think they're much more fun because towers in Breath of the Wild, whilst there usually was a puzzle to find out how you're going to climb it, a large part of it was climbing up this vertical, tower, and that could be quite not boring as such, but frustrating maybe at times.
It
Whereas
never
this
felt like
time,
just a chore, but like
yeah, chore. That's probably a better way to put it. Yeah.
I don't know if it did, but it often was a bit of a mission at least.
Yeah. But now they've still retained the puzzle aspect as to activating the towers, but all you're trying to do is just open the door and activate a terminal on the ground floor of the tower.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. Because the entrance is at the ground floor now, it means the variety of puzzles they can do is much different. Because you had to get to the top in Breath of the Wild, it meant that every puzzle was some variation on how do I get to the top.
On how to
I'm
climb,
not going to climb this. Yeah.
Whereas here, yeah, some of them you have to climb to the top because like something's blocking it or whatever. But sometimes you have to go to caves underneath. Sometimes you just have to solve some puzzle nearby.
Yeah, there's like you said, a lot more variety this time. Correct me if I'm wrong, this one you just open the door, right?
Yeah, you don't have to do any puzzle this time because it needs to introduce you to what you're going to be doing in these towers.
Yes.
And yeah, so we were talking about multiple times, right, playing this game, you're not sure you're going to get a paraglider. And then Pura says, like, yeah, we've been waiting for someone who's good at paragliders to come along because we need someone to do some paragliding.
Like they've been testing like all these other people up flying up this sky tower.
They just, yeah, well,
It's like,
maybe they just have a normal human reaction to getting launched.
like, oh yeah, like they
Yeah.
they got consumed by the gloom. It wasn't us that fired them up this Skyview tower.
Well, I mean, maybe they survived, but rather than
Yeah.
handily taking out their camera and doing
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at.
they
That they maybe kind of
screamed.
blame their injuries on the gloom, but it's actually injuries from using them as like kind of to operate the Skyview tower, but no one can do it.
And then, yeah.
I was initially thinking, like, why did it just get a Rito to do it? But maybe why the Rito haven't been travelling as much will become apparent
I think maybe
in
she
later
even has a
episodes.
line about that. Like, we would like to get Arito to do it, but that's not really an option right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interestingly, just a little bit of an amusement here before we talk about the tower in a bit more detail. If you complete all 4 kind of initial main objectives before you get the paraglider, there's like an additional line that Pura has where she goes, "Wait, what? You did what?" So obviously the game probably didn't intend you for you to do that, but the devs recognised that somehow you did it, and they threw in that little bonus line for you.
Oh, yeah,
I've definitely done that with other side quests and stuff where you get the quest and then you're like, I've already done that. You're thinking to yourself,
You've already
you
done
just
it.
click A and then it just quest complete.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes. Yeah. Love that. Because that would be terrible. Imagine if you never activated the quest, but so you could never do it. And you just lost out on a specific side quest. That'd be so annoying.
Lesser devs might have had that issue. I don't think. I kind of trust Nintendo to
Nintendo
fall into that.
Well, I certainly trust this side of Nintendo for sure.
Mm-hmm. But so the Skyview Tower is essentially one massive rocket to propel a human being skyward, and for them to attach a Sheikah USB to their Pura Pad to scan the region and kind of get topography information and such.
What I really like about a lot of this tech that we're seeing is it's we had that ancient Sheikah technology in the first game, and this is Pura trying to recreate it, but she can't quite.
My reading into this was a bit different because I thought, so you clearly see when you activate the tower, as you see kind of little guardian limbs pop out. Yeah. My reading into this is the Skyview towers are maybe one way that Pura recreated. Sorry, not recreated, repurposed. That's the word. Yeah, and probably other tech as well. I mean...
Yeah, that's definitely what she's doing, is repurposing old Sheikah tech. But she hasn't figured out how the Sheikah could just scan the area the way their towers did. She still has to go slow into the air and look at it.
But it also has the added effect of scanning the Sky Islands as well, which is a byproduct she probably didn't know about at the time when they were making these.
But yeah, so when you did the lookout, the Skyview Tower, how far away did you land?
I just went right back down. I knew I was going to have to go chat to Pura again.
Yeah. But later I would always go up there and then end up getting distracted by something flying off in another direction. I've also targeted 3 other things in other directions.
Yep.
Oh, wait. Is there anything in the sky you can land on from this one?
Not easily, no.
One of the only ones you can't.
Yeah, which I think is a good
there's one of those
choice.
star-shaped islands, but you can't really do anything at it yet.
That one's impossible to reach.
Okay.
And becomes you don't need to get to that one. Yeah,
I see.
Yeah. More on that later. But I really like the animation and when you kind of fly up, and
the animation,
I like the
music, the seeing the world like that.
I like the fact that it's clearly
many times.
When you go up
the
a Skyview Tower,
this game could render all of that, and then you've got some stuff struggling on Switch to do a room. Wizards, absolute.
I was going to say though, they are sneakily disguising a loading. The map
I'm sure they are a little
during
bit.
Skyview servers, but it's clever the way they do it though, because while we've not got full control, you can still turn the camera and it's still clearly loading the map to get this big Sky view. But it's so clever. This It's great. I love it. Like when you go up and you can just rotate the camera around, like looking for new areas before you actually set off to skydive at the end of it.
It's very clever. I even like the initial, when the kind of that giant bellows, I don't even know what to call it, is inflating below the tower. And you kind of have that kind of free stage zoom where it kind of pans in and you've got the music stings to go along with it.
The first one we do here as well, when Link's not expecting it, and suddenly all these guardian arms start harassing him, is great.
It gave me, and I don't know if it's a purposeful homage, but it definitely made me think of when Link gets shot out of the cannon towards the Forbidden Fortress in Wind Waker.
Yep.
I'm sure that does a similar
deal.
That
had very similar like comedy zooms and stuff and everything.
Yeah, that's what made me think of it, is the music stings and the
kind of flexing their like kind of playful like comedy side.
Yeah, it might not be like an homage so much as just they've still got the same sense of humour.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like, I like that Zelda's not a humorless game, right? Like, they do
especially
fun,
when it can be pretty dark. Like in this one, this whole game and story, in different hands, could be like, well, what a harrowing dark vision of a post-apocalyptic world harassed by yet another calamity. But it doesn't feel like that at all.
No, there's still life to this world.
Yeah, still life. Watch me attach this rocket to a Korok.
There's still life in this world till I'm through with it.
So, upon landing back down, go chat to Pura, and she gives us a multitude of little objectives, and the game also gently nudges some other objectives for you potentially to check out as well. She tells you that there's been some strange goings on happening with our the 4 other races of Hyrule, which we'll probably go and check out at some point. And she kind of drops a not so subtle hint that maybe you should go and check out what's happening with the Rito. Nudge, nudge, go chat to the Rito.
I think Pura even tells you, like, oh, there's this newspaper. They might be able to help you investigate more. You should check them out.
It's not Pura.
Which, like you said, is another hint that you should head in the Rito direction.
It's not Pura, actually, but it's when you land back from the... I forgot about this. When you land from the Skyview Tower, at the bottom of the tower, there's...
Rio, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know he's there, your little reporter friend.
Yeah.
But I think I'd already had it mentioned to me a couple times before I even spoke to him.
Right.
I think like multiple people are telling you.
She also
Ben,
says
I think is his name.
You can maybe go check with Joshua and Robbie. They're investigating the chasms, and that might be worth a look. And there's also a very flustered Sheikah attendant who's trying to look for Impa as well, which seems to be, again, where he's pointing is heading up towards the Rito as well. So the game and us might be going up towards the Rito at some point.
Weird. It does drop an awful lot of different objectives on you. So at first I'm like, well, this is a bit overwhelming. But then you realise, oh, a lot of these things are all lining up in one direction, so I guess I can just head that way and not worry about the rest just yet. Which is a pretty smart way of doing it, I guess.
Yeah, so despite us talking about we're probably going to go head up towards the Hebra region and check out the Rito, what we should probably do first is see what's going on with Robbie and Joshua, as that's the one sort of main objective that's a bit out of the way. Let's check out those guys first, and perhaps we'll find that to be a fruitful endeavour. We shall see. Yes, so join us for that one next time. Until then, Luke, where can we be found?
We can be found on Twitter at Hyrule Field Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this, make sure you rate and review, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We're a pretty new podcast. We want to find some listeners, so please do share this around in any capacity that you have. in your Zelda Facebook groups or on your Discords or just, around the water cooler at work. Why not tell a buddy? And if you want to help support the podcast, keep it online, you can head to patreon.com/podcastiopodcastius. And there you can throw $1 a month our way to help keep it going and listen to episodes early. And also you can just find links to the other podcasts me and my pals create. Why not check out Films or Filth, the Citizen Kane of podcasts, where we talk about the top 100 and bottom 100 films on IMDb. Where we just recently recorded an episode with a certain James J. Moyles himself.
Yes, indeed. On a very
Dreadful
bland
Street
movie.
Fighter movie.
Yes.
Dreadful's not the word. Bland is correct. Yeah, it's just...
Yeah. And, Jas, what are your sage words of advice for this week?
Oh, well, it's got to be... It's not done until it's sun and done.
Yes. All right, goodbye.
Cheerio.